guys, today's makeup tutorial is going to be on the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture palette. I was so excited to buy this. I actually bought it as soon as it came out on her website. I just love the shadows in here. I feel like they are just so different from what I've seen from eyeshadow palettes recently. I just love all the cool tones and I'm obsessed with this color Axis right here. It's who I used in the crease. Yeah, I just feel like I've kind of been in a makeup rut recently and I just was so inspired by all the colors in this palette. I created this eyeshadow look. It kind of reminded me of a mermaid, but I hope you guys enjoy this eyeshadow makeup tutorial and let's get started. Starting off on the eyeshadow, you always want to use a base color. So even though this base color, I'm using the shade Dawn from the palette, it's not going to show in the end result, but it just helps it look more blended. As you can see, you'll see I'll build different colors on, and you may or may not see these colors as like in the finished product, but they are essential for creating a nice blended look because they help with the layering portion. So I am using the shade Dawn as my first shade, and I'm taking that on a Morphe R37 brush. Afterwards, I'm going in with the shade Edge. It's like this beautiful bright yellow color from the palette. Again, this color won't really show through in the end result, but it just helps make the blending process easier. And because I have hooded eyes, I'm concentrating the majority of this product in the outer portion of my eye. I'm finally going to start putting on that pigment that you will see in the final look, and I'm taking the shade Destiny from the palette on a MAC 217 brush. Now I do have to say, I don't know if there's something wrong with my palette or if this is like a problem with the palettes in general, but for some reason this pigment itself, Destiny, is super patchy when it goes on. You'll see like I really tried to work that shadow and blend it out. And again, I don't know if that's just my palette or if that's all the palettes, but for some reason the shade Destiny is just so patchy. It just does not want to work. And it's kind of a bummer because I really liked the shade. It's a beautiful khaki color and it has so much potential, but for some reason, in my palette at least, the shade is just really patchy. Next, I go in with the shade Untamed just to kind of help build that color and maybe buff out some of the patchiness of the Destiny color. I will also go back on with a little bit of the Edge pigment, the yellow pigment, with a fluffy blending brush just to help keep those edges smooth. Because I'm creating a halo eye, as they call it, I'm concentrating the majority of this pigment on the inner and outer corner of my eye. You can see too, I just really pack it on first to get that pigment really dense in the outer corner, and then I will go back in later and kind of buff it out upwards. Now for my favorite shadow in the entire palette, it's called Axis. It's this beautiful, I want to say marine blue color, and I'm taking that on a Morphe M506 brush. It's a little tiny brush, so it helps me really concentrate that pigment where I want it to go. And you will see me doing this technique again where I will really densely pack it on in the inner and outer corner, and then once there's less pigment on the brush, that's when I will start to softly blend it upwards and inwards. For my favorite part of this eye look, I'm taking the shade Electric. It's this beautiful, I want to say it's like a green yellow shimmer color, and I did spray my brush and wet it before I applied it to my middle of my lid. But I'm just concentrating this beautiful glitter shade in the center of my lid, and then when there's less pigment on my brush, that's when I'm going to work it outwards. So in the past, I've always been really nervous about getting the glitter shade over the matte shadow I just worked so hard to build up, but then what I realized is I could always go over it again with the matte shadow and it will help it look more blended. So you can see here, I'm just really going all over the lid with this. I'm not trying to be super careful where I put this, just because you can always go back in later and cover it up with the matte shadow again, and it actually makes it look more blended when you do that. Now the glitter pigment is packed on there. I'm going back in with my Anastasia brush that came with the palette and the shade Axis. I'm going to start lightly packing that in the inner and outer corners, and then I will lightly pat that on top of the glitter just to help make it look a little bit more blended. I'm taking the shade Dawn again underneath my eye on a small pointer brush just to really get in that under eye area. I don't want this to be too far smoked out, so I'm just trying to really concentrate this right underneath my eye. Again, this color is your base shadow color for the under eye area. So if it does get a little bit messy or if it does go a little far out, it's not the end of the world. I actually really like the shadow too because it's very similar to my skin color, so I can actually use that shadow to kind of clean up the edges. Then I will be going on with the shade Edge, again with the same exact brush, just to kind of build that pigment and help blend it out. Another favorite shadow of mine from the palette is the shade All Star. It's this beautiful, rich maroon color. That's the shadow I'm mainly going to be using underneath my eyes. So I'm first taking this Morphe M213 brush. It's very, very tiny, but it's great for putting in the little details. So it really helps me smudge out that All Star pigment underneath my eyes without it getting everywhere. I'll also be taking the shade Roxy. It's a pretty, almost corally orange color, just again to blend those colors out and buff them out. And afterwards, since it did kind of mute down that All-Star color, I will be going back on with the All-Star color again on that same pointer brush, again just to blend everything together and really make that pigment pop. For my lashes today, I'm taking these Yevette lashes from the House of Lashes collaboration with Sephora. So you can actually get these lashes at Sephora. I really like them. I feel like they're very simple and they're elegant and they're not too full. I know with my eye shape, the lashes can easily overpower my eyes and it can completely hide the eyeshadow look. And it's a bummer sometimes when I do more intense looks like these where I really want the eyeshadow to show, like that's the main focal point, to put on these big lashes that completely cover all of it up. So I love these lashes because you can still see the eyeshadow through it. And the mascara I'm using today on my bottom lashes is the Marc Jacobs Velvet Noir Mascara. As a finishing touch to this eye look, I am putting the shade Cube on the inner corner of my eye. This shadow is kind of like the Destiny shadow, but for some reason in my palette, it's just very crumbly and it's really hard to densely pack it on. I see some of these beautiful eyeshadow looks on Instagram and this shadow is just glowing. And I was the most excited about this shadow, but for some reason, I think it's just my palette, but it's just crumbly and it's super hard to get any sort of pigment payoff. So I have to go back in several times to really pack on that color. I even wet my brush. Like, I'm just trying really hard to make the shadow work. Of course, I'm also using the same Cube shade as my brow highlight, and I love it because it looks like it's going to be white, but then it comes off as this like really cool pink color. So I feel like it just adds another beautiful pop of color to this already colorful eye look. And this is the finished look. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this makeup tutorial. I know I've been doing a lot more Disney videos recently and I haven't felt very inspired with makeup, and I was so excited once I got this palette to create this eyeshadow look. I felt very inspired. So I hope you guys liked it too. Give it a big thumbs up if you did. That way I know what kind of content you guys like me to create. And I'm posting videos about once a week now, at least once a week, sometimes more, like 2 times a week. So yeah, it just depends on the week. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!